Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace be upon you all, and welcome to another Finding Truth podcast. And today we have Dr. Amr Arafa, who is going to talk to us about the miracles of the human skeleton. Dr. Amr is an MD in orthopedics. Dr. Amr, you're with me?
Yes, I hear you.
And he is also a practicing medical doctor. And so welcome to the show, Amr.
Well, thank you for having me. When you first approached me about this broadcast and presentation, I had so many ideas in my head. It's not just about the human skeleton. It's throughout my study of medicine, a lot of things really were very fascinating, and I'm going to share some of the ideas that I've learned and that I find amazing. But of course, the focus will be on the skeleton because that's my field. Yeah.
Great. So I'm very anxious to see what you're going to tell us today about what is fascinating about the human skeleton, and maybe you will also show us why it is lending itself to show the greatness of Allah, our Creator.
Well, yes, well, that's the basic idea. The basic idea is that when you study the human body and you go in depth, you will find that the system is very complex and created in such a way that is so perfect, so confirming with each other, so able to adapt to its surroundings, and really everywhere you study, you will find amazing truths that cannot have happened by coincidence. So when you see this magnitude of things that are so properly designed and organized, you know that chance has no role in this field, and you know that there has to be somebody some being behind this, a creator and a designer. So I think it should lead you to believe in Allah and believe in our Creator.
Great. So while you are sharing the presentation, there is a hypothesis called the Salem hypothesis, and it says that people who are advocating creation or opposed to evolution by chance and mutation and natural selection are typically, or more probably, you will find them engineers or medical doctors than others. And there is another twist to this hypothesis, that if you find somebody who is advocating creation, who is of a scientific background and opposing evolution, then the odds are that he will be a medical doctor or an engineer. And if he's an engineer, the odds are higher that he's an electrical or an electronics engineer. So we are both very
so we're on both ends of the spectrum.
This hypothesis to be advocating creation. So I know why engineers believe that God is the creator, because we understand design. And today I'm going to understand from you why medical doctors see the creator in what they see in the human body. So let's go through your presentation.
Okay, so now I have shared the screen. I think
yeah, it's on the screen now.
Yes. Okay. Well, again, it's just a collection of ideas of things that I have wondered about and seen very fascinating, and that I don't believe can happen by chance. So, by the way, a lot of things that I'm going to talk about are very basic things, and people who are listening are of different backgrounds. So definitely you'll find people who will find this very primitive, and other people in other fields will see it quite clearly. But I try to explain it in details so as to be able to reach out for anybody who doesn't have this background. So at the beginning that I'd like to talk about, and one of the things that really amazed me, is the cell differentiation. And the ability of the cell to differentiate into specific cells with a specific structure and function. As we all know, it starts with the zygote entering the sperm entering the ovum and creating the zygote, which has the two nuclei of the father and the mother. And then the cell divides, producing cells that are exactly similar in content, shape, and in every form to the original parent cells. They divide into 2, 4, and more cells, creating what's called the morula, and then after that, the blastula. Then something starts to happen where suddenly some group of cells start to separate in a special area called the inner cell mass, and some other cells start to line themselves in the outer parts, and a cavity is created in the middle. Then this inner cell mass, which is again composed of cells that are exactly similar in shape and structure, they start to develop cavities as well and align themselves in a disc in the center, which is called the embryonic disc. Then the cells start to become different. The cells at the outer layer are called the ectoderm. In the middle layer, they are called the mesoderm. In the inner layer, they are called the endoderm. And these different types of cells will eventually change in their shape and in their structure until they become very highly specialized cells of different tissues. So from the ectoderm, we will get the neuron cells, the cells of the skin. From the endoderm, we will get the lung cells and the secretory cells in general in the body. And from the mesoderm, you'll get the different connective tissue cells, skeletal muscle, skeletal cells, red blood cells, smooth muscles, and other tissues as well. Then the wonder does not stop there. This disc starts to fold in a specific way where a head part starts to be formed, a tail part starts to be formed, and eventually the heart starts to appear in this area. This means that the cells here that were originally similar to the other cells in structure and in DNA content and in everything, they start to differentiate and develop into specialized cells that form the heart. Then the embryo, as we see it here. Then the limb buds appear, the upper limb and the lower limb, and eventually you grow up into becoming a full human being with such complexity. So as you see, we start first with a cell that is exactly similar to all other cells, but it differentiates in the end into a cell with a different shape. Here you find a bone cell, an osteocyte. Here you find a nerve cell, and here you find a muscle cell, muscle fiber, which is very long and consists of contractile tissues inside to be able to contract and perform its function. It's not just about the differentiation of the cell itself, but the arrangement and the complexity of the different cells and tissues in each organ. So when you look, for example, at the liver, it is designed in such a way where you have the hepatic lobule, or the liver, that's the functional unit of the liver, with the central vein, and the veins radiate in all directions, with the hepatocytes between the vascular channels, and in the corners you have what we call the portal triad, with the bile duct and the artery and vein. If you go further, for example, in another tissue like the kidney, which is very complex, you will find that the renal cell differentiates into a very long cell with wide parts and thin parts, and a part that goes down into a loop in the medulla of the kidney and then goes up again. This is called the nephron, or the functional unit of the kidney. It's a very complex cell with very complex different parts, and each part has a specific function in absorbing different electrolytes and getting rid of other electrolytes into the urine, so that when you end up with the urine collected in this duct, you end up with things that you want to get rid of and you have reabsorbed things that you want to keep. So, this degree of complexity that all starts from the original same cell in the beginning, there has to be some driving force for this. So you start with an undifferentiated cell and you end with a differentiated cell, and a cell that is performing a specific function in a specific organ. Well, scientists tend to explain this cell differentiation with many factors. So it is an amazing phenomenon, but they say it's clear. We know why it's happening. It's happening because there are many factors that stimulate the cell to change into a specific cell. So there is gene regulation with different parts of the gene, the genome itself regulating the transcription of different proteins. We have cell signaling where certain proteins are expressed by the neighboring cells, and these affect the cell and induce it to change into a specific type of cell. Growth factors. You have the asymmetric cell division where the cells divide, but some of the cytoplasmic proteins and cellular proteins are kept in one cell more than the other, and this helps the cell to differentiate. You have the epigenetic factors, the pioneer factors, the transcription factors, DNA methylation, a lot of mechanisms that scientists use to explain how the tissues are induced to develop into a specific type. Okay, so we lost the slide show, or
No, the slideshow is still okay. We're fine.
You're fine. Okay.
Yeah, the slideshow is still working. Yeah, it's just fine.
Okay.
I have a question for you here. If you're done with this part, so I'm not sure if these are actually they are explanations for how this is led to happen, but it is not an explanation for why it happens. So, for example, if you have one cell, which is this initial composite cell of the sperm and the ovum, and it has the same DNA, then at the end of the day, the question is that we have this one program in the DNA of the zygote, and then we have another program on top of it that will tell
the original problem, which part of the program should be switched on and which part of the program should be switched off.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, my understanding is that a brain cell and a liver cell and a muscle cell all have exactly the same DNA if you look into their nucleus.
Yes.
But at the end of the day...
But different parts of the DNA are expressed. And why different parts of the DNA are expressed? It's because of all of these factors that control the differentiation.
Yes, so this is to me amazing. So I'm imagining, for example, that I have a car, and the chair that I'm sitting on inside the car, and the motor of the car. So when we try to do it, we make, for example, the chair from leather, and the motor has different metal alloys. Yes. But the amazing thing is that in the human body, it's the same. Let's say the same hydrocarbons, or the same carbon and hydrogen and oxygen, and the same genetic material. But this cell will look like a chair, and this one will look like a motor, and this one will look like a shaft, and this one will look like glass, and it's completely amazing.
It is exactly the case, and it is amazing. And what I actually, this slide, which simply has no meaning, I think, but it's simply, I'm trying to explain that even that is still an amazing fact that such an undifferentiated cell has developed into a differentiated cell. And even if we try to find some explanations on how this process occurs, it does not lessen the process being a miracle or an amazing process. In fact, the more we find, the more we understand that the system is so complex, and that such complexity cannot happen unless there is a designer who is leading the way and designing this complex system that transforms such a cell from being undifferentiated into differentiated. This slide here is simply, for example, if I'm giving an example of a person who was visiting the pyramids in Egypt, and then after that 4 hours later, he's seen on top of the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. So this is the scientific fact that we have seen. Somebody was in a certain place, and then he's in another completely a different place. And it seems to be an amazing fact. Then scientists would attempt to explain this and tell you, well, it's not so amazing. We found the answer. The person has been transferred there from one place to the other by an aeroplane. There is something called an aeroplane. So it's not an amazing fact anymore. He's been transferred. Well, actually, you will ask the question, but how come there is such an amazing aeroplane being designed and able to transfer this person from one place to the other? And how can it fly? How can he be carried through the air? So the scientists study further and say, well, this is because the wings are specially created in a way to to have airlift. The tail is specially created in a way to be able to navigate. And so they discover more and more of the complex systems of how the process is being done. And so they prove more and more that there is a designer, there is a creator, there is somebody, some being out there that is actually using such complex and intricate details to produce this amazing result that we have seen. So I don't know, is this example such a valid example for you or not?
In terms of engineering, yes. Yes, and
So,
actually, I would like to keep you going through your presentation, but I have seen more doctors who believe in Allah than those who don't. But have you, for example, talked to a medical doctor who does not believe in Allah, and what is what could be his explanation to something like this? How can something like this happen if the DNA into a single unicellular organism is amazing enough, and then when we look at this, it's completely mind-blowing. So how can anybody be a doctor and not believe in Allah? I'm not.
Well, actually, the explanation that they give you is that this is the way things are, or this is nature. This is nature's doing. Or actually that there is the, all the evolutionary and ideas and all the ideas that talk about the genetic mutations and the natural selection and so on. All of these things that say that all of these events have happened by trial and error, and they have become selected because they are the favorable events and the favorable outcomes. So that is the explanation that most of them give for such complexity. And actually, maybe you can go ask one of them why I can't explain this on his behalf. Yeah. Anyway, if you'd like, I'll move on. So this was one of the amazing things that I noticed while I was studying the embryological development of human beings early on in my study of medicine. The other thing that is really amazing is
I have a little comment here from one of the viewers. So is our channel friend, Mr. Peguero. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he's quoting, I think this is part of the Hebrew Bible. And the translation is, as you do not know the way of the wind, and it's amazing you're giving an example with the airplane, okay? Or how the bones grow in the womb of her who is with child. Likewise, you do not know the work of God who has made everything. And it's actually reminding me of something in the Quran. And then he says, also, praise be to Allah. So he's a Christian friend, and he also says, wonderful programming. So thank you, Kaunex, and let's go ahead.
Okay. Well, the other thing that has amazed me throughout my studies is the incredible design of the different systems in the body, and I'll be focusing more on the skeletal system because that's the one that I've studied in detail. And it's how it is adapted to the function that it should be performing. So let's first take a small look, and it's a very complex look on the foot. As you see in the slide, the foot is a very complex structure anatomically. It is not composed of one single bone. It is actually composed of many bones. I think they are 20. I don't know the exact number actually. I'm not so good with numbers, but you have this is the bone on the top here, and then after that, this is the calcaneus or the heel bone that touches the ground. Then you have here 5 bones, one called the navicular, the cuboid, and 3 other bones. Then 5 metatarsals, and then the toes, each with 3 phalanges in the lesser toes and 2 phalanges in the big toe. This actual design here, if you look, you will find that the shape of each bone is created in such a specific way so that when the bones are joined together and they articulate together, they create an overall shape with an arch. As you see, we have, if we look from this side, this is the outer side, there is an arch. If we look from the inner side, there is actually a higher arch here. And if we look again from below, but this one is actually looking from above, then we have a transverse arch at the level of the forefoot or the front of the foot. From this amazing design, creating the arches of the foot, makes the person while standing bearing weight only on actually 3 points. The heel point is the point which carries most of the weight, or actually half of the weight during stance, and then the point of the lesser toe and the point of the big toe. These are actually the main points that are touching the ground, as well as the lateral edge of the foot, as you see in any footprint. This amazing design in the foot is very important and plays a very important function during the walking, what we call the gait cycle. The gait cycle.
So before we go to the walking, if somebody is just standing still, it's as if you are standing on 2 tripods.
Yes.
Exactly. Because this immediately, because this immediately caught my attention, because if you want to have something in terms of engineering or mechanics balanced, then the best thing is to put it on a tripod. And that's why, for example, people in photography or surveying, etc., they would have their cameras sitting on a tripod, because then it will give them the maximum stability, because there will be always a third one that balances the other 2, and you can have this thing. And the other thing that caught my attention also is the arching, because typically in civil engineering, if you have something that is bearing plenty of weight, you create an arch.
You create an arch rather than being flat. This is correct. This is perfectly correct, to be able to transmit the forces better.
Yes. So when you have, for example, a wall and you want to open a door in the wall, and the ancient architecture, you will always find them using arches, because then they did not have the steel or the reinforced concrete slabs that can be put, horizontally and carry. So you create the arch, and the arch will absorb the forces and put them nicely to the sides of the door or the window. So this is like the arch takes the weight, and it conveys it to the tripod in whether in this plane, the vertical or the horizontal plane. And it's the first time for me to notice that even in the fingers there is another arch. So it's it's amazing. SubhanAllah.
I will get to the hand in just a few moments. But actually, more about the foot. If you look at the walking cycle or the gait cycle, it is in itself amazing, really amazing, at the complexity of the different muscles and the interaction between the different joints that are all moving in unison and performing very, very complex functions to just be able to make one single step. If I have a fast explanation, we tend to describe the cycle in reference to a single limb. For example, this limb. It begins when the limb touches the ground, and we usually touch the ground by the heel. So it is called the heel strike. This is the forward limb, and it is called the heel strike. Then gradually the ankle settles down, and the whole foot reaches the ground. And at the same moment, the other limb lifts off the ground, as you see. So this is called the stance phase, or the phase where the foot is touching the ground. Then after that, as the whole body moves and is propelled forwards, the same limb that we're talking about now, the heel starts to lift off the ground, and eventually the last part that leaves the ground is the toes. Once the toes leave the ground, the other limb is now supporting the body weight, and this limb goes into what we call the swing phase. It is where the knee is flexed to carry the limb forwards and then reach the same heel strike at the end of the cycle. And the cycle repeats itself. So there are periods where we call the double support, where the weight is transmitted on both limbs, and the period called the single support, where the weight is carried only on one single limb while the other limb is moving forwards. If you look at the functions of the foot during this cycle, you will find that the foot needs to have two completely opposite functions. First, it has to have an ability to absorb the force once it strikes the ground. So you cannot suffer a problem with a fracture, maybe, or with every single step. You have to have a mechanism that absorbs the weight and the energy when you strike the ground. Then you have to have the foot being flexible and supple so that it can take the shape of the ground. You don't always step on a flat surface. Sometimes the surface is bumpy. Sometimes there is a dip in the surface that you stand on. So the foot has to be able to adapt to the shape of the ground on which you step. And then after that, with the beginning of the heel of the toe off, or the raising the foot, you will find that the body weight has to be transferred. The whole body weight has to be transferred gradually and propelled off the ground. So the foot has to transform itself now into a rigid lever to be able to transmit the weight and carry on with the forward movements. So it has to be supple, and at the same time, it has to be rigid, which is a very amazing thing. So if we go back to the slide where we look at the bones of the foot and the joints of the foot, you will find that they are arranged in such a way so that when the heel is actually moving out of the body, taking a valgus movement that we call a valgus movement, the joints of the middle part of the foot are unlocked, and the foot is supple, and it can the shape of the foot can change. But when the heel moves inwards, what we call inversion, or to the inner side of the body, the joints of the midfoot become locked, and they become transformed in as if they are all one single bone. So they become rigid, and this rigid system allows for the transfer of the weight and the forces. So that's why at the beginning of the heel strike, there is a tendency for the heel, the calcaneus bone, or the heel bone, is not immediately under the center of the leg. It is to the outer side. This bone, the heel bone, is to the outer side. So when you actually touch the ground, this bone tends to flip to the outside, tends to go into valgus, unlocking this part and helping the foot to become supple. Do you grasp what I'm saying, Ahmed?
Yeah, you're referring to the first image on the left, right?
Here, yes.
Yeah. This one.
In this position, the bone flips to the outside, and so it unlocks the middle part of the joint, causing the whole foot to become supple, so that it is prepared well when it touches the ground to be able to adapt to this surface. But
to the shape of the surface.
Yes, to the shape of the surface. Towards the end of the stance phase, once the heel is elevated from the ground, this bone tends to flip inwards, locking the middle parts of the foot and transforming it into a rigid lever that carries the body weight, and eventually helps the body weight to be transferred to the other limb and to propel forwards. I don't know if it's clear or not, but I mean the intricate design of the bony anatomy here is able to transform the foot from being supple to being rigid. And though they seem to be two opposing factors, yet they are both needed in different parts of the gait cycle.
And what is the S shape that is on the lower
yes,
right?
I'm going to go there. Go there. This represents the point of the body weight as in the different parts of the stance phase or the standing cycle, the part of the cycle where you stand. First, the body weight is in the center of the heel, then it shifts to the outer part of the foot, then as you approach this part where you tend to raise your heel and start the push-off, the body weight moves more and more towards the inner side until the last part which leaves the ground is the big toe. So the big toe leaves the ground and you start the swing phase or the other phase.
Go forward again.
This shift of the body weight from the outer part of the foot to the lower part of the foot is actually a function of the differential length of the metatarsals. These metatarsal bones, you will find that the shortest one is the fifth bone. The shortest one is that of the little toe. And this differential length, once you flex the toes, extend the toes because you are pushing off the ground, causes the shift of the body weight towards the big toe in the end. All of this helps in.
You mean that the fact that the smaller toe in the case of the foot, it's not like that in the hand, but it's in the case of the foot, the lower toe is shorter, so this it causes the foot to move the weight to the bigger toe, which remains in contact with the ground. And does this explain if somebody has his fingers, his toes with the same length, I think he will have a hard time walking, right?
Yes, he will lose balance. Because once you extend the toes in this stage, you will find that all the heads of the metatarsals are touching the ground at the same moment, and this will not help in the gradual transfer of or the pushing off of the weight off the ground and transferring to the next phase or the swing phase. And that's why, by the way, people who have a problem with their big toe joints here suffer a lot during walking. Huh?
Yeah, I can relate to that. So actually, the gradual change in the length of the toes is exactly ideal to the bipedal movement of the human being.
Yes, we call it the metatarsal break. That's what we call it.
Yes, and then it also explains why, if somebody is wearing like a shoe that is, for example, one piece or made of wood or something, and his foot cannot flex with it, he will have very hard time to actually walk comfortably.
Yes, you will have to start using the knee to elevate the whole foot off the ground, and the energy expenditure or the energy that you will use to actually perform the step will be much, much, much higher and much more troublesome for you than if you were walking barefoot.
And actually, it also explains why more and more modern materials are used today in terms of engineering the shoes, especially the ones that are used for sports or for walking or for jogging, to the extent that the sole of the shoe, the more flexible and the more it gives the foot itself the opportunity to express its movements and its flexibility more freely, the more the person feels more comfortable and does not have pains or problems while moving.
Yes, of course.
While the old style, very hard sole will cause problems with the knees, etc.
Yeah, simply it will make you trip over. You have noticed that when somebody wears, for example, a hard boot or something, he trips over. Why is he tripping over? Because the transfer of weights and is not balanced. So simply he just falls he tends to fall.
Yeah, yeah. It also explains why in the army we used to make this mechanical movement, which looks compatible with the very hard soles that we.
Yeah.
But if you are really in the battlefield, you do not wear those things. You wear things that are more dynamic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's maybe some of the. That's يعني, I'm just trying to get a glimpse of different things. But moving on to, for example, the hip. The hip is designed in such a way that is really magnificent. The ball moves inside the socket, and this ball is connected to the rest of the thigh bone. But
I think
if
we
you look
lost
at
you.
why this system is designed in
We lost you just for like 10 seconds. So if you can start the hip again.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm saying that the hip is such a magnificent joint in its design to be able to perform the functions that we need. If you look at it simply, it's a ball. The ball is moving inside a socket, and this ball and socket is connected to, or this ball is connected to the rest of the thigh bone in this manner. Okay. The design in the form of a ball allows for different movements in different planes. So actually, it allows for movement in almost all planes. So you can move by the axial plane with you can move in all movements: flexion, extension, rotation, abduction. So it allows for the different types of movements that we see in the hip. But again, we need a lot of movement, but we need stability, because the hip joint, again, is designed to transfer the weight of the body. So you have the trunk and the head and so on. All of the rest of the body is above you, and you need to transfer the weight through half of the weight through this hip and the half of the weight through the other hip to reach the ground. So it has to be able to withstand the transmission of weight and be very stable, and at the same time be with this magnificent design that allows for a lot of movement in many directions. And if you notice, Allah, our creator, has designed it in such a way so that the thigh bone is not immediately under the ball. There is an offset here, what we call the neck shaft angle. So he could have, Allah could have created it in a way where you have the ball and immediately under the ball is the rest of the thigh bone. Why is it offset to the outside? Well, actually, I'll give you two reasons. One of them is very obvious. It is put to the outside so that there will be some space in the inside for the muscles and the different tissues of the body in this inner part of the bone of the thigh. And at the same time, to be able to open your pelvis, you need to go to the bathroom, you need perineal care, you need to open this area for to perform a lot of functions. So that's why they are both set out to the outer side or laterally rather than being in the central part. Another amazing thing with this offset is what I will explain in this next slide. If you look at this person here, normally when you are standing on both limbs, the body weight is transmitted through both hips. But when you elevate one limb, for example, while walking in the swing phase, actually the whole body weight on this side will make the pelvis drop. It's very clear. If there is nothing to counteract this force, this side will drop. Okay. To avoid this from dropping, the only thing that you can do would be to sway your whole trunk to the other side. So,
Amr, did you change the slide from the one that has the X-ray of the hip to the next one?
Yes.
Because it didn't change on the screen. So maybe you can reshare the presentation, please.
Okay, so I will stop sharing and reshare it again.
Yes, please.
Okay. Just a second. It's just taking a few moments.
Sure.
So do you see it now? Are you with me, Ahmed?
Yes, I am. So yeah, we're back again. So
okay.
Yeah.
I was talking about the offset, why the bone is designed so that the thigh bone is not immediately under the ball, but it is offset to the outside. So we talked about the opening up the pelvis and the need for functions to be performed and go to the bathroom and other things. And the other thing is what I'm talking about in this slide. So you see it now?
Yes, I do.
Okay. What I'm saying is that when somebody is standing on his both of his feet, the body weight is transmitted through both feet, through both limbs. Yeah. But during walking or when you attempt to lift one foot off the ground, normally all of the half of the body weight in this area will cause the pelvis to drop because it is unsupported. That's clear? It's obvious. To avoid this and prevent this from happening, you would need to shift your trunk and your whole body to the supported side, to shift the center of gravity to just to lie above the standing limb and avoid this pelvis from dropping. But this actual shifting of the trunk to one side and to the other side,
it is like, for example, if you have those little toys, and the toys do not have this intricate design, and if you try to make the toy stand on one leg, it will immediately fall. So you have actually to do what you are doing to shift it towards the supporting leg. So you're saying that this design makes this not necessary, right?
Yes, it makes this not necessary, because otherwise you will be moving with while walking, while shifting your trunk to one side and then the other side, one side and then the other side. This will exert an incredible amount of energy, and it is actually how the duck works, and the duck as the walks. It's called the waddling gait. Well, this can be prevented by this beautiful muscle here. This muscle is called the gluteus medius muscle, and it is one of the abductors of the hip, what we call the muscles that tend to shift or move and rotate the leg to the outside. Okay, so if I want to rotate this thigh bone to the outside, or this femur, we call it, to the outside, this muscle will contract. It will push this area upwards, and so the rotation which occurs at the hip joint will cause this bone to move to the outside. Okay?
So it will automatically balance the body without having to swing left and right all the time.
If we go back to this slide, what is actually normally happening is that when this part is unsupported, this muscle here, which is the abductor muscle, contracts, and instead of moving the bone to the outside, it actually supports the pelvis. So it works not from its origin, but from its insertion. And this contracture here helps to support the pelvis and prevent it from falling on the other side. Actually, in the normal gait and in the normal person, when you lift your foot, you will find that the pelvis on the unsupported side rises higher than the other one, than the supported side. This is the normal. This is an abnormal thing that happens if you have weakness in this muscle. If this muscle is weak and not able to perform its function, the person starts to walk with this waddling gait. But if this muscle is strong and healthy, what normally happens is that the unsupported side of the pelvis rises upwards rather than falls.
Amazing. Okay? It's amazing.
And to be able to, for this small muscle here, to be able to carry and resist the half of the body weight. For example, if we talk about somebody who is 100 kilograms moving, and so this 50 kilograms will be falling on this side, and this muscle will have to generate a force that can counteract the effect of 50 kilograms, and not just counteract it, but lift the pelvis higher. To be able to perform this offset here is magnificent in creating an arm of resistance for this muscle. So you know, of course, that the magnitude of the force is equal to the moment that is created is equal to the magnitude of the force created by the muscle multiplied by the arm of resistance of the muscle. So the longer the arm of resistance, the more force that can be generated by the same muscle and the same length of the muscle and the same size of the muscle. So this offset here and the attachment of the muscle to the outer part of the bone on this side creates an arm of resistance that enables the muscle to generate a force that would counteract the effect of this body weight. It's amazing.
So this little offset actually gives the opportunity for a smaller muscle to cause the balance of a larger body, and this is definitely a design made by somebody who understands exactly what levers. Yeah, exactly. This is amazing design that completely puts in consideration levers and moments and design of to balance a moving system with forces to the extent that we can just move on two legs. And you know what's amazing and completely striking to me is that we are doing this completely unconscious, completely unaware of what's happening, and all of this is just like automatically taking place.
Yes, and by the way, we know all of this because we see different diseases that are created by when this system fails. For example, there are some developmental problems when the person suffers from a smaller offset. So this person starts to walk with the waddling gait. Or for example, if a person who starts to have a disease that causes this muscle to be weak, so it affects how he walks. The incredible amount of forces that are created on the joint, and at the same time, the joint does not degenerate and does not fail. It can survive repetitive cycles of hundreds and thousands of steps per day for 365 days a year for maybe 80 years, and still the joint has not yet failed. It has withstood the compressive forces and the shear forces and all the different types of forces over the years, and it is still functioning. So it is amazing. I'm just giving an example. There are a lot of much more complex details going on.
Here I have a comment from a viewer who says, Chosen One says, some of the atheists claim that the glute muscle is what makes us evolve this way and stand straight through evolutionary processes. So
yes. So they say that it happened through a trial and error system, and it became naturally selected.
Yeah.
Haphazardly conforming itself to the rules of the mechanics and the rules of the lever systems and the rules of the physics.
Yeah, so natural selection has actually gone to mechanical engineering classes and studied very hard. But it really reminds me now of this ayah in the Quran. يا أيها الإنسان ما غرك بربك الكريم الذي خلقك فسواك فعدلك. It just immediately strikes me. And in English, it says, oh, human being, what has made you, I'm not sure غرك, how should it be translated, but maybe what
tempted you
away from your generous God or generous Lord, who has created you and proportioned you and set you straight.
Yes.
And or set you upright.
Yes.
And the amazing thing is that the next ayah says, في أي صورة ما شاء ركبك.
Yeah.
in what image has he chosen to put you together? So he is referring to putting parts together that will be in harmony
Eventually
to
make
the
you upright.
yes, that we are standing straight and upright.
Yes.
So,
Well,
subhanallah, when we look at these marvelous things and we are pondering on their magnificence, and then we go back to the Quran, for example, or even to the earlier books, and we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has actually very specifically referenced them.
yes.
And even when you were talking about the toes, and it
Yeah.
also reminded me with the other ayah that says بَلَا قَادِرِينَ عَلَى أَن نُسَوِّيَ بَنَانَهُ.
Yes.
Maybe banan is refers more to the fingers of the hand.
Well,
But
actually, I would have wished to add a presentation about the fingertips and the magnificent design of the fingertips to be able to adapt to their functions and their touch sensitivity and a lot of other things that make fingertips such an amazing creation that Allah would definitely have chosen to say in the ayah. قادرين على أن نسوي بنانه. But actually, I didn't include it in this slide. Maybe some other time.
yes,
in this presentation.
it's
Let's proceed
yeah,
because there are a
yeah,
lot of other things that I want to share.
excellent.
This offset, as you see in the hip, is not just the only amazing thing about the design of the bone in this area. Actually, the bone is not just designed in this way. It is designed with an anterior or a forwards offset as well. If you look at this image, this is actually looking at the hip joint from above. And this is the foot down there. And this is the whole limb, as if we are looking at the joint from above.
Wow,
it's clear, huh?
the leverage action is now very clear
Yes.
that it is yeah.
So the system is designed not that the ball and the bone are immediately on the same plane. It is designed so that the ball is a bit in front of the rest of the bone. You understand me? And there is an angle between them that is normally about 15 degrees. This is an excessive angle, which is not normal, and it creates problems as well. But this designed angle of 15 degrees is very, very important. We call it the angle of antivergence. If you look at this hip here from the side, this bone is behind the head by 15 degrees. It's at a plane that is behind the head. Okay?
Yes, okay.
So this beautiful antivergent angle actually has many benefits. The first thing it does is that it causes more of the back of the head of the femur or the head of the hip to be covered by bone, and less of the front of the head to be covered by bone. Okay? This gives a lot of freedom for the front of the bone more than the back. And this is actually the movement that we need to be able to flex our hips to this degree. I can flex this joint from 0 up to 140 degrees of flexion, like this person here. He is moving it from 0 to 140 degrees of flexion. So there has to be a clear area in front that would not cause the bones to block and lock against each other. Okay?
Absolutely. Yes.
In contrast, when we attempt to move our limb backwards, the movement is limited. We can do it only for 20 to 30 degrees. We cannot do it to this incredible degree of flexion.
And this is very consistent with the fact that we are actually focused on looking in front of us and manipulating things in front of us, and
yes,
maybe
we are
playing football and
this limb is being flexed all the time. The hip is being flexed all the time in order to sit on the ground, in order to, even during the movement and of the gait cycle, the first step in moving the limb forward is to flex the limb forward. So this flexion movement is much, much more important and has to be cleared than the extension movement. So this is one of the uses of the antivergent, or one of the uses of this angle. Another magnificent use is When this part of the bone is more covered, it means that the bone can resist, is more stable behind than in front. And it can resist forces that are transmitted, yani when forces come from the front, it is more prepared to resist these forces and avoid being dislocated or avoid being taken out of its socket. And actually, 90% of the forces that attempt to destabilize this hip and attempt to dislocate it come from the front. For example, when somebody is sitting and he crashes into the dashboard, this movement is actually moving the hip and striking it backwards. All of the falls that we fall to the ground, when we fall with the hip flexed in 90 degrees position. And this flexion means that the whole of the effect of the fall will be transmitted through the bone to the hip and will attempt to dislocate the hip backwards. But it cannot be dislocated backwards because there is excess bone created in the back more than in the front because of this antivergent angle. So it's magnificent.
So it's the human skeleton is built in a way that is very suitable to the way that humans are going to use it, and even to the
this incredible interrelation between the structure and the eventual function that we need. There has to be a designer, there has to be a background thinker who designed this to be able to achieve this. You cannot achieve a goal without planning to reach that goal. It's very obvious.
It's very obvious. It's very obvious for those who have eyes that can see and ears that can hear.
The other beautiful thing about the antivergent, again, is this simple slide. In this slide, we are seeing the hip from the side. And so this is the thigh bone. This is the ball or the head of the femur. And this is the angle that we are talking about. The head is on a plane that is a bit forward or anterior in relation to the rest of the bone. And this is the rest of the pelvis. This is the sacrum or the backwards part of the pelvis. And this is the front of the body. When we stand, this design causes the gravity line to pass behind the center of rotation of the head. It does not pass through the center of rotation. It passes behind the center of rotation of the head. So actually, while we are standing, there is a normal extension force caused by the body weight that is keeping the hip upright, that is keeping the hip extended. We don't have to use any of the muscles that are here to extend the hip by active force. It is simply designed in a way so that while we stand, our body weight will perform and exert an extension power, an extension moment on the joint, keeping it in the extended and upright position, so that we eventually can stand like this.
So it's again فسواك فعدلك. So while we're standing comfortably, and the hip takes the position that is upright automatically because of the shift between the line of the center of mass of the body and the center of the joint itself.
The position of the center of the joint itself. And this shift is created by the antivergent angle created in the design of the upper part of the bone, the upper part of the thigh bone or the upper part of the femur. So it's really beautiful.
Amazing, subhanAllah. Okay. Again, it relates to the same ayah, and it's subhanAllah. Yeah.
We can move forward. By the way, if you're if you're out of breath or you need to relax, just tell me. We can take a break. We can stop. But I'm as long as you're not bored, I can go on.
No, we can go on, and maybe even later we can partition the video, and some people can watch it all together, or even watch the smaller episodes. So yeah, please proceed.
Okay. The next amazing thing is the shoulder. So we shifted to the shoulder. The shoulder is designed in such a way that is very close to the hip, but it is different in a lot of things. Well, the first thing is that the hip is designed so that the ball is covered by bone almost completely. So, or there is, as we say, that the socket is 3/5 of the sphere that will cover the head. On the other hand, in the shoulder is designed so that the socket is only 1/5 of the total diameter of the or of the total circumference of the head of the humerus, or the head of the arm bone. This difference is very crucial because we need two different things here. The hip has to be mobile and have movements in different directions, but it has to carry the body weight and has to be extremely stable. On the other hand, the shoulder has to be completely mobile, even more mobile than the hip, and be able to move a lot of movements. And at the same time, it is not transmitting any body weight at all. It transmits the weight of the things that we lift and the weight of the arm itself, but it does not transmit the rest of the body weight. And if you see here, there is no offset. The bone is immediately under the ball. So this slide makes it clear. This is the shoulder, this is the hip. The hip is almost, the socket is almost covering the bone, but here the socket is only covering part of the bone. And this gives the shoulder tremendous range of movement that can be moved in all directions, and this is not available in the hip. This is called the circumduction movement. You can actually move your arm backwards completely and then move it upwards and then backwards and to the front and to the side. You can move it in 360 directions in all different planes. And this is very crucial to be able to place your hand at any desired plane away from your body, to be able to handle and grasp the thing that you want to carry or the thing that you want to reach. So this magnificent ability to move the shoulder in all directions is created by the design that allows this ball to move without being blocked by the articulating bone on the other side.
SubhanAllah. So complete freedom for the arm and freedom with proper support and balancing for the hip.
Yes. But then this complete freedom would create a problem in the shoulder, that this shoulder will be unstable. It will slip by the effect of the weight of the arm. So to avoid this slippage, Allah uses other forces to support the joint. These forces include the muscles. It is surrounded by very powerful muscles, the deltoid muscle, the subscapular muscle from this deltoid muscle surrounds the hip from the front, from the side, and from the back. And these other muscles as well. When this muscle attempts to contract, it actually compresses the head towards the glenoid, or it compresses the head of the arm towards the scapula or the shoulder blade. When this muscle attempts to contract, it exerts an upward force as well, compressing the an upwards and then inwards force, compressing the head. So with the different movements, the joint is always compressed to keep it stable.
Yes.
And in addition, there are very strong ligaments to support the joint. Strong ligaments, especially in the back or in the back of the joint, to support the joint. So the bony stability is not very high, but the ligament and the muscle stability that surrounds the shoulder is very high.
So there in the hip we had this muscle that does the balancing exactly where it should be, and in the shoulder is like it's completely wrapped with muscles all around it, so that it's well supported and it can still give all the possible contractions that are that will make the very large field of motion possible. Amr, I think we lost your voice for the last 10 seconds. So if you can just, after I completed my question, we lost your voice.
Well, maybe I didn't hear the question. Did you ask something?
Yeah, it's like the muscles are completely surrounding the shoulder, so it can be stable,
Yes.
and it can give it the range of all possible movements to whatever direction.
Yes, this is true. So that was what I wanted to say about the shoulder. If we can move on,
Amazing. Yes.
we can have a look at the forearm. We tend to think of the joints of the upper limb as being the shoulder joint, the elbow joint, the wrist joint, and the fingers. But we are forgetting that there is a joint hidden inside the arm, which we call, which is hidden inside the forearm. This joint actually is able to move the hand from looking upwards into looking downwards.
Yeah.
Like this person here, he is moving the hammer from this side to the ups and down below. His forearm is completely resting on the table, and he's actually moving just his forearm, carrying the hand with it. This movement, we call it the supination movement, to be able to put the palm to the upper side. And this is a movement, we call it the pronation movement, where you put the hand to the dorsal part of the hand, or the back of the hand, to the upper side. So how is this movement possible? And it is possible simply by this design. Instead of making the forearm being composed of one single bone, it is composed of two bones that lie next to each other. One of them is called the ulna. The other one is called the radius. In the near the hand, this radius, or this bone, is very big, and it is actually carrying most of the wrist joint bones and the rest of the hand with it. And near the elbow, this bone, which is the ulna, is the bigger one, and it is mainly the one which is causing the movements at the elbow with flexion and extension. So that one of them remains constant and acts as an axis, and the other one rotates around it in this direction, as you see. So here, the two bones are next to each other. Here, the radius rotates on top of the axial ulna, carrying with it the hand to be able to flip it from the palm side to the dorsal side. So you see it?
Wow, subhanallah, amazing. I didn't think before about why we have those two bones instead of one, but the way you explain it, it's totally they rotate with each other to cause this possibility of flipping the hand. I don't think we have this. We don't have the same ability in the legs, right?
No, we don't have the same ability in the legs, and that's why in the legs, though the design is again two bones, but one of them is the main bone, and the other one is just a small structure on the side. It's mainly for muscle attachment and for other things, but it is not
allow for the rotation.
It does not allow for rotation. Yeah. There is minimal rotation, by the way, but it's not very significant. Yeah.
But the thing is, because we have our eyes in the front of our face, typically, if you want to rotate your foot, you will rotate your body, so you don't really need to be walking backwards while looking forward. So
actually, you don't want to walk backwards while looking forwards. You will
absolutely. So it makes complete sense that you want to have maximum manipulation in your arms, but you want to be directing your foot to the direction where you are looking, and also to have all the coherence with the mechanics of the movement that you described during walking.
Yes. So the whole design of the upper limb is about giving absolute freedom and ability for the hand to reach anywhere in a proper position to grasp and move and function. Whereas the whole concept of design for the lower limb is to be able to carry weight and to propel the body forwards during walking and other activities of walking and running and climbing and so on. So it is a different concept of design, But and so it leads to a lot of different structural design parts differences again in the design, as you see. And
Amazing.
for this movement to occur, this is the bone anatomy, but you have to have muscles to be able to perform this rotation. So you have a muscle that is attached on the outer side of this bone, and it rotates and flips around the other bone to get inserted on the inner side of this other bone. So that when the muscle contracts, it creates a rotational force or a torsional force that would move the radius with it into supination and pronation. Okay.
I'm sorry, I said the muscle itself is inserted in a way so that its movement, its contraction will cause this flipping.
It starts from the inner bone behind the other outer bone. Then it moves and flips around the outer bone and goes to insert on the inner side of this outer bone.
Wow.
In a rotational fashion, as if it is wrapping it from behind to the inside. So that when it contracts and rotates, it will create a torsional movement that will flip the bone to the outside.
Wow. So
yeah?
this is exactly designed to cause this movement just by contracting a muscle.
Yes, all movements in the body are done by contracting muscles. Yeah, this is. But
yeah, I mean just
so
this one
designed. Yeah.
Just this one muscle just contracts, and you just you rotate your arm. It's it's a very powerful design, so that just one simple contraction will give you the exact movement that you want.
By the way, this supination movement is caused by this muscle, which we call the supinator muscle, and it is also caused by the biceps. You know, the bi muscle that we all are so proud of. It is also a supinator muscle as well.
Wow! So now I'm putting my other hand on the biceps and trying it, and then.
Okay.
All right. Great.
Moving on to such an amazing mechanical concept that we will see here, which is the pulley system in the human body. There are some pulleys in the human body that are designed to make the system much more mechanically efficient. As you see here, we are looking at the thigh muscle, which is the quadriceps muscle, or the quads. It is called the quads because it is composed of 4 heads, one side here, one side there, one here, and one deeper to it. So these 4 muscles, they all end up into forming one tendon, which is called the quadriceps tendon here. This quadriceps tendon inserts into a bone that is just hanging in space in this area, called the patella. And then out of the patella comes a ligament that inserts from the patella into the design here. So the quadriceps muscle ends up in a tendon called the quadriceps tendon that inserts into the patella, and the patella is attached to a tendon, or a ligament actually, that is attached to the leg bone or the tibia. So it is as if this patella, or this bone, which is hanging in space, is completely engulfed inside the tendon of the quadriceps muscle. Okay?
Wow.
This amazing design, as you see here, this is a side view. So this was a front view of the system, and this is a side view of the system. This is the thigh bone, this is the leg bone, this is the knee, this is the patella, this is the quadriceps muscle that we were talking about, and we saw it from the front in the previous slide. It ends up with the tendon that is attached to the patella.
I hope the pointer of your mouse, if you can make it a little bigger, if you can do it. If it will be confusing, it's okay.
It will. I will have to end the slideshow.
Okay. No, it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, fine.
So this is
next time we will choose a bigger pointer.
Okay. This is the quadriceps muscle. This is the patella, or the bone that we're talking about. And it ends up with the patellar ligament that is attached to the leg. This mechanism we call the quadriceps mechanism. What is the function of this mechanism? The function of this mechanism is that when this muscle contracts, it pushes the leg, it extends the leg, it makes the leg upright, okay?
Yes.
It extends the leg. So if we have the knee is flexed and this muscle contracts and shortens, it will push the patella, it will pull the patella will pull the leg, and it will extend this slightly flexed position. Okay?
Yes. Yes.
Well, the beauty of this patella that actually is that this patella is actually a pulley. The only function of the patella, or the primary function of the patella as it is written here, is to act as a pulley. The quadriceps muscle is contracting from here, and because the patella is present, the lever arm of the muscle is increased, thus increasing the strength and the moment again of the rotation that is being created by the same magnitude of force generated by the muscle.
Wow.
Imagine here, for example, in this slide, if we don't have the patella. So this is the patella here in a normal knee. This is the patella here where this is a knee here where the patella is removed. In this knee, the lever arm of the muscle is short.
Yes.
In this knee, the lever arm of the muscle is much longer. So this creates an advantage for the quadriceps muscle to be able to generate immense force that will extend the leg and keep the person standing upright.
Wow.
Okay.
Yes.
Another action again is that if the muscle is pushing from the with a shorter arm of resistance, the compressive load on the joint will be very high. But when the insertion of the muscle and the pull or the line of pull of the muscle is moved a bit forward, less compressive forces are created on the joint than if this was not present. So again, the wear and tear that happens in the joint is much less.
Wow.
Okay.
So if somebody loses his patella, he will really have hard time walking and standing upright, right?
Yes, he will suffer from two problems. He will suffer mainly from weakness in the quadriceps muscle that will cause a limp and maybe an inability to extend the leg completely while walking, and this will create some kind of limp. And there will be increased chances of wear and tear and osteoarthritis of the joints at an earlier age.
All right. SubhanAllah.
Okay. It's simply just by creating a pulley in this area. So this is against a system that is based on the proper design. It cannot be haphazard.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If we look at the hand, the main difference here between the human hand and the ape hand is in the direction of the metacarpal bone, which is the first bone for the thumb, and the direction of the thumb. Instead of the thumb being along the same plane with the other fingers and next to them, the thumb is created at a right angle or placed at a right angle in relation to the other metacarpals. And this slight difference allows for magnificent movements to be created, to be done by the hand. It allows for the opposition movements, pinching, opposing with the different fingers. If the thumb was exactly on the same plane with the rest of the fingers, the thumb would have not been able to rotate in order to reach and oppose with the other fingers.
Yes. And this allows us to write and to draw and to
allows us to do everything. Actually, it allows us to use this pinching hand or pinching grip to do whatever, to write, to do many of my fine movements like holding a key, for example, and so on. It allows us to create the hand grip to be able to put large objects inside the hand, small objects inside the hand. The hand itself, the skin of the hand is not smooth, it is corrugated, and this creates friction that prevents the skin of things. For example, if you find somebody who has a disease where there is excessive sweating of the hand, the grip of this person will be much less. You won't be able to hold things like a normal person would.
Yes, absolutely.
So there is in every single detail, there is a concept behind this detail. It is not haphazard. It has not happened by chance. If you look at the tendons, the forearm is, there are muscles in the forearm. These are the muscle tissues that end with tendons. And the tendons that control the fingers, the muscle bellies are in the forearm. And then the there is no space here to have enough muscle, to have enough meat, to give all the movements and power that you need. The grip of the human being is very powerful. You can hold 50 kilograms in your hand. So you have to be able to create a force that is tremendous to be able to continue that grip. So
Yes.
the thickness and size of the muscles, there is no space to be placed distally. They are placed proximally. They are placed more where there is a space. And the length of the tendons is designed in such a way so that the movement of the tendons will allow for this grip to occur. There is just enough length to reach the tip of the finger, and to when the finger contracts, to shorten, to if there is excess length, it will be weak. If there isn't enough length, it will not achieve the movement you want. So it is designed in such a way that this movement can happen. And there is a balance between the length of the tendons on the front and the length of the tendons on the back. Because when you actually flex the finger, the tendons on the back have to be able to be stretched to an increased length. And the opposite is the same. Okay, so there is a balance between the length of these two structures, the ones on the front and the ones on the back.
And I was always wondering, how come the fingers, if you are carrying, for example, dumbbells in your hand, how come the fingers can actually support the weight of an item that is 30 or 20 or 30 kilograms? Just the fingers. Is this what the pulleys are doing?
Well, yes, that's what I'm going to tell you about now. When the tendon enters into the finger, it is surrounded by a sheath or a covering that is called the fibrous sheath. It is made of fibrous material. And this fibrous sheath that is extending throughout the finger is reinforced in special areas, and it is deficient in special areas. If you look at it here, it is deficient in certain areas like this area, and reinforced by in other areas that we call the pulleys.
Wow.
In the fibrous sheath. As you see it in this example here, the tendon is removed from the inside, just showing you the sheath. Okay. In the parts where the joint is present, you will find that the sheath is defective, so that when you flex, there will be space and laxity enough to allow for the bending to occur.
There is clearance.
Yes, there is clearance. So in front of the joints, there is clearance for this movement to occur. At the same time, this pulley system is very important to prevent this movement that we call bowstringing. If these pulleys are not present and this sheath is not present, when the muscle contracts, the tendon will just simply dislocate away from its position, what we call bowstringing, like the string of the bow, rather than exert the whole movement in flexing the joint. So when you find somebody who has a ruptured pulley, this person will not be able to flex his finger completely like a normal person would.
So the sheath is guiding the tendon to the extent that it can cause the complete flexion of the fingers, so that we can have a full grip.
Yes, it is keeping the tendon next to the joint, that it is actually moving and rotating. Notice here that we are not talking about the lever arm, because the muscle is not here. This is just a rope. This is just a tendon. The muscle is actually in the forearm. So it is not about increasing the lever arm now. It's just about increasing the torque of the movement as much as we can by keeping the tendon fixed to the bone that it is moving.
the way I understand this is that this orange tendon gets like pulled.
It is pulled by contraction of the muscle.
Yeah, towards the arm, and because
Yes.
it is led by those green things, the pulling movement causes the curvature of the fingers. So
Yes.
the linear pull of the tendon towards the arm will cause the circular grip of the fingers.
Yes. If you look, for example, if you imagine that these green structures are all ruptured and they are not there, what will happen when this orange tendon is shortened and pulled to the outside? Instead of moving these joints, it will simply move in space and go out. It will not move these joints. So why is it moving the joints here? Because it is kept close to the joint and fixed to the joint by these pulleys.
Yes, subhanAllah, absolutely amazing. And all of those things, like you were saying in the beginning, they form in the human being while the embryo is becoming a fully grown person, getting proportioned and getting put together in very small, intricate parts until we are this magnificent creatures, subhanAllah.
Yes. The next part, I'm sure you're getting tired.
No, fine. I'm sure we are going to make this into chapters and issue it like the chapter of the feet, of the hips, of the shoulder, the forearm, the pulleys, and then the hand, and so I have an idea about.
Okay.
All right, so just go ahead.
And maybe I think we 15 more minutes or something.
Yeah.
So these are some examples about the beauty of the design in the gross structures and the gross anatomy. But when we look more on the microscopic level, you will find such amazing designs as well in the choice of the materials that are being used to give you the function that is required from this tissue. So if we take a cross section, for example, in a piece of bone, you will find it looking this way. It is organized in such a way with circular patterns in this way. And actually, these circular patterns are the hard bone structure. Okay, we call it the bone matrix. And these tiny black areas are the bone cells. Okay. And in this central part, there is the blood vessel that supplies all of this with blood.
It looks like a tree.
Yeah, it's very close to the tree. Yes.
Yeah,
and it performs the same function. Actually, you have to. It is a system that is designed for support, to create a backbone, to create a rigid structure that would support the weight and support all the forces that are created by the muscles to allow for movements at the joints. So in this cross section, for example, this is another example here. There is the central vessels in the central part, and then the circular layers of bone with muscle, with bone cells in between. If you look at the bone itself, I mean these circular layers of bone, what are they formed of? These circular layers of bone are called the bone matrix. And the bone matrix, or the bone matrix, is actually being secreted by the bone cells, not specifically by the osteocytes, but by the bone cells in general. Okay, there are different types of bone cells. So this secreted matrix is designed of a mesh or a network of collagen fibers, a network of filaments. Okay, and these network of filaments entrap in their pores calcium phosphate crystals that are insoluble. So the structure is based on a mesh of filaments formed of collagen that entrap a very high concentration of insoluble calcium phosphate crystals that give the bone its stiffness and rigidity. Okay, The
Subhanallah.
beauty of this design, we will appreciate it in the next few slides.
So
But-
you're telling me that the bone is like flesh with calcium entrapped in it.
Yes,
More or less?
exactly. Yes, it is flesh with calcium entrapped inside of it, and it is highly vascular. It contains very, very, very vascular, a lot of many vascular channels and vessels. And that's why when you get a fracture in a bone, you bleed. There is a tremendous loss of blood from the bone, because though it seems as if it is a non-living tissue, but it is actually living, and it is actually regenerating itself all the time. It's actually being worn out by the forces to which it is exposed, and being broken down and building itself all the time and renewing itself all the time to maintain its power and its stiffness. So it is highly vascular, it is highly active, and it is actually doing tremendous work in the background to keep itself this way.
Subhanallah, I'm thinking of, for example, when engineers build pillars for a house, and the pillar is just concrete, it's just solid, and then you do not have access to the interior. But God's creation is that even this bone that looks to us like a rock or like a solid thing is essentially flesh, and it can repair itself, and it's in continuous replacement of itself, so it can carry our weight and absorb shocks and fix fractures, and it's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
The beauty of this design will become apparent in the next few slides. But we have two different types of bone. The whole bone structure that we see grossly is not whole. It is composed of an outer layer of compact bone that is the same design of this bone here, called the compact bone, and an inner layer of what we call spongy bone. This is bone again, but the density of the bone tissue is not very condensed, and the design of the collagen direction and so on. By the way, in this slide, these collagen fibers are not a network of fibers that are placed haphazardly. They are all directed parallel to each other in response to the line of stress to which the bone is exposed. As you see here, they are all in this direction. They are not transverse. They are all moving in a longitudinal direction next to each other. Understand? So they are arranged again in a certain specific manner. They are not haphazard. They are not interlacing in all directions. In spongy bone or the trabecular bone, the arrangement of the column is different, and the bone is much less dense. And this design here is marvelous, because you need strength to withstand the stresses, and at the same time you need the bone to be light. Otherwise, you would have created a very structure that in itself will.
Amr, we have some problems with the audio, so maybe if we have a moment of silence, then the line can recover.
Okay.
Yeah, let's try now.
Okay. Do you hear me quite well?
Yeah, now it's good.
Okay. So I was talking about the design of the bone on the outside, the final shape of the bone. The bone is not whole. It is made of an outer compact layer and an inner spongy layer. And the idea here is to be able to create a stiff structure and at the same time not be heavy. This inner structure is much lighter, and it is very important for the whole bone eventually to be light, strong, but light. Otherwise, the skeletal system in itself would have been very heavy in itself without even the rest of the weight of the other organs that it has to support.
Absolutely. So, actually, I was very surprised when I'm using one of those body weight devices, and it's telling me that the whole bone in my body is somewhere between 3.5 to 4 kilograms, and I was shocked with this very small number, just 4 kilograms.
Yes.
are carrying this whole body, and it's amazing. And now it's clear why this is the case, because it's like sponge from inside.
Yes, it is a layer of very dense, compact outer shell and then an inner sponge. This is a vertebra, for example. And in the skull specifically, you have an outer table or an outer layer of compact bone and an inner layer of compact bone. And in the middle, there is spongy bone. And this spongy bone, again, is very important for absorption of energy and absorption of shock. If this bone was completely compact, it would have been much stiffer and more brittle. And so it would have fractured easily. But it is designed in such a way so that there is absorption of energy in the middle, absorption of shock, easily fail and fracture.
Wow.
And if you look at the brain, which is the most important structure in the body, it is completely engulfed in bone, completely surrounded in bone, from above, from the sides, from below even. It is completely covered in bone to be completely protected.
Yes.
And then if you go to the chest, you will find that the bones in this area give protection, but at the same time allow for expansion, because the lungs have to expand. They have different volumes when you inspire and when you expire. And they have different, when you inhale and you exhale. And they have different, the heart itself is continuously contracting and shifting, moving in its volume. So it has to be protected and supported, and at the same time, it has to be able to expand. So the chest cage is designed in the form of ribs that are able to separate and allow to expand, and at the same time, contract and protect the vital structures inside. Then when you move on to the stomach and the liver and the rest of the organs of the abdomen, you won't find any bone protecting this area, because these structures are not as vital for life as the heart or the lung or the brain. And you have to have some degree of flexibility in the muscles in front to be able to bend your body and to be able for the stomach to expand when you eat a lot. If you are a heavy eater, you have a big tummy. So there can't be bone there to avoid to keep this in.
And even for pregnancy for women, and
of course.
Otherwise, it would have been very difficult.
Yes. So the design of the system in general, if we look at the bone tissue that we have just talked about is exposed to many stresses. There is a compressive stress that the bone has to be able to counteract. There is a tensile stress. For example, when you are moving your limb away or so on, there is a tensile strength, and the action of muscles that are actually pulling on the bone upwards or downwards. This is creating a tensile strength on the bone. You have a shear stress, you have torsional stress, and you have bending stress. The bending stress will create compression stresses on the inner part and tensile stresses on the outer part. So the bone has to be able to withstand all these different types of forces. And I'll take you back to the design of the bone matrix. It is formed of filaments. Filaments, like, for example, you can imagine them like woolen filaments. If you stretch these filaments, they become very, very powerful against tension. Okay? So this is how the bone resists the tensile forces that it is exposed to by the tension of the collagen filaments. At the same time,
because calcium as a mineral, it will never sustain tension. It will sustain compression only.
Of course. And the compressive strength of the bone is from the calcium, insoluble calcium pyrophosphate crystals. So this incredible design of the matrix is so amazing to be able to resist both the tensile forces and the compression forces to which the bone is exposed. Okay.
This is amazing, and it tells us that, subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen a mix of materials between the collagen that can endure the tensile forces and the calcium that can give the stiffness and endure the compression. So at the end of the day, we have this. It's like reinforced concrete. You have the metal,
beams,
and you have the concrete.
Yes,
right?
The concrete and the beams. Yes, exactly. The same idea.
It's amazing. SubhanAllah.
And then you will find somebody who finds a pillar of concrete that is holding the building and saying that it happened by chance. It is there by chance.
It's there by chance, and you have the exact correct type of metal, and you have the exact correct type of cement and everything, and this is somebody discovered the formula. No, the building itself discovered the formula by chance.
By the way, I'd like to tell you that there is there is even much more complex details in this. For example, the calcium phosphate crystals are insoluble because the pH of the surrounding medium is just balanced enough to control the solubility products of the calcium and the phosphate together. If the pH changes, the calcium phosphate will be more insoluble, and the person will turn into chalk. The person will turn into a stone. And if the pH shifts to the other side, the more of the calcium and phosphorus will be insoluble, will be more soluble, I guess, and there you wouldn't have enough calcium phosphate to make the bone strong enough to withstand the compressive forces. So again, there is a whole mechanism controlling the pH of the medium surrounding the matrix to keep the just correct amount of calcium phosphate that you need for this balance.
Wow, subhanAllah. So even it's not only the right constituents, but the right constituents again with the right proportions. So you would always have the right properties.
Yes. And again, this is a living tissue that is continuously changing. So there are the effects of the metabolism that are being excreted. There are hydrogen ions that will attempt to increase the pH that have to be taken away. You have to, this is a living tissue. It's not just something that was designed and left. It is designed and being continuously and always active to be maintained in this situation.
SubhanAllah, amazing. So engineering on the mechanical and chemical properties and selection of materials and all working together.
Yes. If you look at, so now we talked about the tensile strength and the compressive strength. So what about the torsional strength? Well, the torsional strength is a factor of this design of the cylinder. It is designed as a hollow cylinder with a hollow part inside. Because the torsional strength of any material is a factor of the diameter rather than the density of the tissue. Okay?
Which slide should we have in front of us now? The one that has 4 pictures or something else?
No, something else.
So it didn't flip. So I think we'll need to share it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aren't you bored enough?
Not enough, no. Actually, I'm not bored at all.
I didn't expect actually for it to. I didn't think that it would be that long. Yeah. But I hope you're enjoying it as much as I'm enjoying presenting it.
I'm enjoying it very much, and definitely I know some of the audience cannot stay for 2 hours, but we'll even partition it so they can see it in chunks. Inshallah.
I'm just sharing it again.
Yeah.
So is it on?
Yes. Which one was the one before that?
Yes, this one.
Wow, we didn't see that one too. So this was the one about the tension and the compression and the torsion.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
It wasn't there.
No.
I was discussing. I was when I talked about the bone being exposed to different stresses. There is a compressive stress. There is the tensile strength. when it is being pulled out by the muscles, and when you move the arm away, for example, there is the shear stress, there is the torsional stress, and there is the bending stress with creating compressive forces on the inner side and tensile forces on the outer side. So we talked about resistance to compression by the calcium phosphate crystals. We talked about the resistance to tension by the collagen fibers. About the torsional resistance is designed by the shape of the bone. It is designed in the form of a cylinder that is hollow. So this hollow part is very important because it again makes the bone much lighter, and it creates space for the bone marrow to be there. And the bone marrow is very important for many many functions, including the production of most of the blood cells in the body, in the blood. And at the same time, it does not compromise the torsional ability of the bone to resist the torsional stress, because the function, the torsional power or the torsional strength, I mean, is proportional to the diameter of the cylinder rather than to the solidity or the density of the cylinder itself.
Wow, subhanallah. Do you know that palm trees are designed this way? And do you also know that all those lamp posts in the street, you will have the lamp post, it will have it's like a cylinder, and it's always hollow from inside. So we never design lamp posts to be like very small diameter metal sticks, like a beam. They are always hollow cylinders, because this is what gives it strength. So
so this, we can see this again in the design of the shape of the bone itself. The last thing about the properties of the bone material itself is the idea that the bone is not a solid structure, and it is not a liquid structure. It is actually a solid and liquid structure. There are solid elements there, like the calcium phosphate, for example, and there are liquid structures there, like water and blood and other things. And there is the collagen, which is, let's say, a solid structure with a lot of water in it, so it is semi-solid again. So you end up with a material that is viscoelastic. So it is a material that has the advantages of the elastic materials in general, the solid elastic materials in general, and a structure that has the advantages of the viscous materials in general. So it has the advantages of both materials. The viscoelastic properties of any viscoelastic material adds to the property what we call time-dependent loading, or it affects the stress-strain curve of the tissue itself or the material itself, so that there is an effect of time loading. For example, if you load the force rapidly, the bone will become stiffer and will so be more able to resist than if you load it slowly. Okay, this difference in time will change the quality of the or the reaction of the bone to the stress that is loaded upon it. So you have something called creep and something called relaxation, and this is in the physics of any material, actually, of any viscoelastic material. Yeah, there is something called stress relaxation. As time passes by, in response to a constant strain and a constant deformation, the stress inside the bone gradually drops. The stress is defined as the forces per unit measurement. I mean, per unit density, per unit of the material itself. The strain is the elongation in proportion to the original length of the material. So again, there is stress relaxation. So with constant application of strain, the stress gradually drops.
This is one of the properties of the viscoelastic materials. And you can imagine if you are standing for half an hour or standing for 20 minutes or standing for 1 hour, and you are applying stresses that cause some degree of deformation on the bone. And yet, as time passes by, and with the same deformation there, the stresses inside the bone drop. They tend to drop with time. This is because it is a viscoelastic material. Okay.
Wow.
So again,
what I understand here is that the material composition of the bone will give us the ability to stand, for example, for a long time without the bone crashing under, without the bone accumulating stress. And in the same time, the other curve on the left will give, if I understood it well, will give the bone the ability to absorb sudden application of forces, like if you jump, for example, or you get an impact.
Yes.
So it will react with. It's just like when you slap your hand on the surface of water, the water will react like as if it's a solid.
Yes, it will be able to withstand higher force because you applied the force rapidly.
Suddenly,
so so this time-dependent changes in the response of the tissue in relation to the forces that are applied, this time dependency is a property of the viscous materials. So when you add it to the solid material, you get the advantages of both materials, viscous and elastic materials or solid materials at the same time.
Wow, subhanallah. Never heard somebody explain this before. So this is amazing, subhanallah. So we can stand for long, and we can also absorb shocks.
Yes. So again, so maybe this is the last part in how the design of the different structures in the body is so amazing on the gross level and on the microscopic level, and how the system is so adapted to the function that is needed in a way that really does not allow the theory of chance to be there. There has to be a designer, there has to be a creator who has thought about all of this and created it in such a way.
SubhanAllah. Amazing.
The last 5 minutes, it is on another topic. I told you about it once. And it is one of the things that have interested me when I was studying again anatomy and neuroanatomy specifically in the early years. It is actually about the different senses that we have. We have the smell, the sight, the hearing, the touch, and the taste. And all of these senses eventually are perceived by the brain. So these organs are just the receptors, or they are the input systems for the signal. But the signal is interpreted and understood in the brain. Okay?
Yeah.
If we look, for example, at the touch, the nerve fibers that are in the skin have a specific structure in the end. These different structures are called the receptors or the touch receptors, and they are created in such a way to respond to the mechanical stimuli of pressure and differential pressure to be able to feel the touch, light touch, heavy pressure or heavy touch, vibration, stretch, and so on. Okay? The receptors then send the signals through muscle fibers. So the receptors in the skin send the signal through nerve fibers, They send the signal through nerve fibers that pass through the spinal cord. And there are actually 2 neurons in the pathway. And they end up by sending, this is the other neuron or the other nerve cell, by ending up and sending the signal to the body of the second neuron or this body of the second nerve cell, which is in the cortex of the brain. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is the sensory pathway and how this area gets the signal and perceives the touch signal. Okay?
Yeah.
Another example, for example, is the eye. You have specially designed receptors that are sensitive to light. They are called the cones and the rods, and they are present in the retina. When they are exposed to the light that is coming, certain chemical changes occur that get them stimulated and initiate an impulse. This impulse is passed through the nerve fiber and through the optic nerve until it reaches the brain. Okay?
Yes.
Again, this is the example. The optic nerve comes from this eye and from this eye. And by the way, there is exchange of some of the optic fibers from this eye to the other eye, called the optic chiasma, and then they end up by reaching the nerve cells in the posterior part or the back part of the brain. Okay, this is called the visual area or the visual cortex. So how is the nerve signal propagated? Actually, if you look at the nerve fiber, and you will find that normally there is a differential distribution of ions on the outside and the inside of the nerve cell. This is the cell membrane, and there is a differential concentration of the cations and the anions on the outside and the inside, creating a constant negative charge on the inside and a constant positive charge on the outside. This is called the resting potential, the differential electricity or the differential voltage that is there because of the different concentrations of the cations and the anions. And of course, this balance of differential concentration is being prepared through many specific mechanisms, including channels of sodium and channels of calcium, potassium, and so on. Okay? Once the stimulus needs to be transmitted, there is sudden exchange of potassium to the outside, and this will reverse the signal, creating negative. It's not just a move of potassium; it's again movement of potassium and sodium and calcium. Anyway, it causes reversal of the signal, or what we call depolarization, so that now the inside is positively charged and the outside is negatively charged. And because there is the positive and the negative tend to attract, there is propagation of this depolarization signal throughout the nerve until it reaches the nerve cell in the end, the body of the nerve cell in the end. So as you see here, there is a depolarization wave that is moving along the nerve, carrying the electric signal until it reaches the body of the nerve cell. This is what we call the action potential and how the nerve or the electric signal is transmitted.
Wow. So when a beam of light hits the rod or the cone, this causes a pulse of electric potential that moves until it reaches the body of the neural cell. Yeah.
The body of the nerve cell that is situated in the brain. Okay.
And this whole axon is actually an elongation for one cell?
Yes. This it is whole one single cell. Actually, in the it is two cells. It is what we call a two neuron pathway. Okay, so this is one cell and this is the other cell.
Okay. One cell carries it to the inside of the brain, and the other one carries it to the posterior part.
Yes. Okay, and there is a synapse in the middle between the two cells. When they reach the nerve cell, you perceive and understand that you have seen a visual image and that light has reached, and light is present somewhere. You see an image, okay?
Yes.
What was really amazing for me is that, and I still find it amazing, and I haven't found any scientist trying to explain this, is that this is the shape and the structure and the function of the nerve cell that is situated in the back of the brain. And this is the shape and the structure and the shape and the function of the nerve cell that is situated in the sensory area and the temporal area. So they are exactly the same. It is the exact same structure. Yet when this nerve cell gets an electric signal and is excited, a visual image is created, and we understand something called vision. But when this cell is excited, and an electric signal reaches this cell, this cell here is for the temporal part, which is coming from the ear. We understand that there is sound, that we perceive voices. So it is the same electrical signal reaching the same structurally exactly similar cell, but producing a completely different perception in the end. This is a perception of light, of vision. This is a perception of sound, of hearing. And you have other cells would give you perception of touch. Other cells would give you perception of heat, and so on. But
well, they are essentially the same thing, the same action potential that goes through the axon.
The same exact structure and the same exact action potential and electric signal that is transmitted. Okay. So when you ask scientists, for example, why is this perception different? Why does this cell give me a visual perception and this cell gives me an auditory perception or a sound perception? Why is that? Why? Well, first, they will tell you because there is a difference in the receptor that is attached to the end. This receptor here is a rod and cone receptor that can respond to light. And this receptor here is the receptor in the inner ear that can respond to the sound waves. So that's why this gives you a visual image and this gives you an auditory perception.
This is not an answer at all, because what matters is what is in the brain, not what is in the sensor.
Yes. And by the way, if you cut off this receptor at all, and cut off this receptor at all, and then insert an electrode on this nerve fiber and stimulate, you yourself stimulate this nerve fiber with an outside electrical impulse, you will get visual perception here and you will get sound hallucinations here.
So just transmitting the electric signal alone to the right nerve will give the perception irrespective of the presence of a sensor altogether.
Yes.
So the sensor cannot be what's causing it. The sensor cannot be what's causing it. Yeah.
So it's not what is related. So the scientists came up with another idea. They tell you that the different perceptions are caused by the different positions of these nerve cells in the brain. The nerve cells in the back will give you visual perception. The nerve cells in the front will give you olfactory or smelling perceptions. The nerve cells on the side will give you the touch perceptions. The nerve cells in the temporal area will give you the auditory perception. So it is related to the position of the nerve cell. Okay, come on, guys. Why is it related to the difference in the position? There is no difference in the structure. There is no difference in the microscopic structure. There is no difference in the chemical structure. There is no difference in the electrical signal. And you're just saying that the different perception is simply by the different position. How come?
It's the explanation of the helpless.
Yes. But what goes against this, Ahmed, actually, is that normally in our everyday life, when you resemble this sensory pathway, for example, you have the mic, which is the receptor that takes the input of the sound waves. Then you have the control system, which is like the brain. And in order to be able to perceive sound again from this control system, you have to have an output device that transforms this electric signal again into a sound wave. That's how we do it in life. But Allah does it in another way. There is an input system and there is just the control. There is no output system. Simply when the electric signal reaches this intricate control system, you perceive the desired perception. So what is the reality of perception? What is the reality of the vision we see? What is the reality of the sound we hear? What is the reality of the whole input of the universe that is coming into our minds? Is it real? And where is it?
SubhanAllah. Yes, and I think this is a great insight. I think actually when we had this conversation some time ago, I did an episode about senses, and I think it's the only logical thing is that the brain is just there for storing those things. But just like the PC or the laptop, when you have a camera that is capturing the image and putting it somewhere in the memory, there has to be an external entity that is looking at that part of the brain to perceive the
perception.
And this thing is for sure our soul. So I always like to say that the brain is a transducer. It takes input signals to present it to something else, and this something else is our real person.
Yes.
It is our real soul that is looking inside the brain where everything from our sensors is collected, and we are just not our brain. The brain is just this receiver transmitter. It receives from the sensory organs and gives this on a plate to our soul to see. Subhanallah.
So this is exactly, Ahmed, the what I wanted to end my presentation with, is that this incredible design that we have seen in the body and this incredible system is all just part of the physics of this world, part of the material side of things. But actually, you can never explain this whole system without believing that there is a soul. There is an immaterial part. There is a part of us that is there and that needs to be free and to go to Allah, to go to our Creator, and really understand everything.
You can switch back to the without the presentation so that we do this final discussion. This great insight about the soul is the real person, and the brain is just picking things up. Everything in the brain looks the same. It's all just electricity. And actually, what you said, there is now a company called Neuralink, for example, that is trying to interfere with the sensory signals and read what the brain stores and tries to perform the output function to maybe just with your ideas move things, replacing the soul with a computer that reads out of the brain. So without this computer, who is seeing, who is hearing, who is smelling, who is tasting, who is touching, definitely not the brain, because there is no output device, as you say. And subhanallah, medical science and engineering and electronics and understanding electricity, if a reasonable person has to reach this conclusion that the soul exists and that this great system can only be there with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our creator, having created and put it together in this magnificent way. And I'm sure your message has gone through to the audience. It has been really a great presentation. I think we could have made 5 or 6 episodes out of this with more expansion on each part. So thank you very much, and jazakallahu khairan. And if any of the audience has any question, we can take a couple of questions. I think they're all saying subhanallah now. So subhanallah, subhanallah. And this is just astonishing. Jazakallahu khairan for the presentation, doctor. And so this has been really great. Thank you very much for being here. I'm sure I'm going to ask you to come again.
Yeah, okay, inshallah. Thank you so much, Ahmed, for giving me this opportunity. And may Allah, at least if it's beneficial to one single person, then that's the reward.
Inshallah, it will be beneficial for thousands upon thousands. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Please do share and like this video to help the algorithm spread it more, and share it with your loved ones. And thanks again to my dear friend, Dr. Amr Arafa, for sharing those great insights. And it's great being a doctor and watching God's creation all the time.
Yeah,
it's a very tiring job. I'm sure about that.
Yeah.
And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everybody.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
See you again, inshallah. And I'll just be putting the extra now. And Dr. Amr, please stay for me to thank you offline. All right.
Okay.